Hello, I'd like to welcome Sam Miles, a fellow Irish motion designer who I can't remember how we met. I think we met through Instagram, right? He is from Waterford in Ireland and has probably plenty of stories and interesting tidbits to share with us today. Thank you for joining me, Sam.
How's it going, Brian? Thanks for having me. I think we met at a motion meetup, though.
Yes,
the
London Motion Meetup. Yeah, that was the one. That was the one.
Pre-COVID times.
Pre-COVID, that was weird. Where was that? I was in was it Hoxton? No, Hoxton.
Yeah, Hoxton Square.
Yeah, Hoxton Square. That was it. Yeah, I don't know if that's still going. Hopefully, it is.
Yeah.
What's been your journey into motion design, and like, how have you found it as an Irish person? Because when I left Ireland, there wasn't a hope or a prayer of finding a fellow motion designer, and I wonder if you found it the same.
Like, so how far do you want to go back? Like, are you just talking about first getting into the industry, or?
Yeah, just even college, like all the way back to college. Like, what was your influences? Just straight into it.
Yeah, well, college, like, my degree was multimedia. So, like, it wasn't actually animation based. It was like, literally, it's in the name, multimedia. Yeah. So it's a bit of everything, which has its pros and cons, because you need to specialize in the end and you need to find what your voice is and all that. But yeah, so I'm part of the classic Irish brain drain, like, so the second I got qualified, I just left, like almost 4 days later, like, Jesus, got a picture with the scroll and then left. And it's quite a shame, really, because I've never really properly tried to dive into the Irish creative industry too much. I keep an eye on it from afar, but yeah, I just left straight away and just wanted to sink my teeth into other countries. I went to Australia for a year. Nice. And then I moved to London, and I've been in London since. So I've been in London now for 10 years. Nice. But yeah, like you said, motion graphics 10 years ago in Ireland especially wasn't what it is now. It was, if you can't do an explainer video, you can't do anything. It was all just about explainer videos. But now you can see it's so broad now, like, whereas apps, app design, like broadcast, advertising, marketing in all assets. Like, the other day I was in the pub, like, and there's a tap in the pub and the barman's pouring it, and like there's like bubbles bubbling up, but it wasn't real bubbles, it was animation bubbles. And I was like,
it was like an out of home tap ad. That's mad. Yeah. Where was that?
On the tap, just in a pub. I don't know where it was, London Bridge probably. And I was like, some animator has animated those bubbles, so it just shows that motion graphics really is everywhere, but it wasn't back when we first kind of graduated, for sure.
That's so true. Ash, I remember I was just to a podcast with Ash Thorpe, and he said he thought, this is about 5-6 years ago, he thought that like motion was the next revolution in design, in terms of like graphic design, that everything would be moving. I don't think, even when we graduated, I don't think we see, because you probably did a similar course to myself. Everyone in Ireland called it multimedia. So where was your first break, your first studio? Where was it, an internship, or was it just hopping from job to job and trying to figure stuff out?
Yeah, well, when I finished college, I was looking at internships of like Red Bull and all that kind of stuff. It's somewhere I always wanted to work, but like financially I couldn't afford it, It's something I couldn't do because, Red Bull at the time, I don't know if it's changed now, they were like saying like, fly to Sweden, come live here. Yeah. So like, I always wanted to I'm trying to drop the ego and just like try and get myself into any studio that'll have me at the beginning. Yeah. I've worked at like some amazing studios recently, but I suppose my start in the industry was not that. I worked for PR agencies that had like marketing arms and stuff like that. And I worked in those agencies for quite a long time. And the good thing about them is I was the only guy producing video content and design. So whatever needed to be created came through me. And it's like, if you have to think on your feet quickly and like, oh, how am I going to do this? How am I going to change this? But like when I join teams now, there's like everyone has their own separated section, which is the way it should be done.
Yeah.
But
do you miss that kind of run and gun, like being able to kind of put your hand in every honeypot kind of a thing?
Yeah. Well, it's fun in some ways, especially freelancing. It helped me because, when the industry changes in a certain direction, or if it goes quiet in another direction, I can kind of pivot easily. And like, so I can edit video, and I do motion graphics, and I do design as well. So I am definitely like multi-disciplinary. What would you call it? An all-rounder.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, definitely.
jack of all
Generalist,
trades, I suppose, is one thing.
typical Irish lad.
Generalist, that's the generalist.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, but I actually find that as a strength, really. You know, it's kept me employed and kept me like valuable in companies. You know, they see that I can bring a lot to the table. So, you know, I recommend generalist is a good way to be. That's my mindset on it. I see a lot of people talking about niching down, and I do agree. But I find that being a generalist is kind of a great way to be, to kind of keep yourself floating above water at all times. Yeah.
I think it gives you an advantage to see everything going on, especially now when we can clearly see the industry's a bit slower than it normally was. And if you have multiple skills, you can offer a client something different every time. I think obviously that's been an advantage to you, like with all the types of work you've been doing. I want to go back to something interesting there, which you touched on, the idea of being able to not being able to do free internship. And I think for myself, I suffered from the same thing where you just like you're surrounded by so much wealth in London and everyone able to take a free internship. It's really difficult. And there's definitely like I think when I started a class problem in like the UK, it was like, oh, you're kind of expected to do a free internship. That's definitely changed, I've seen. Like, how did you battle that? Because did you have to have a day job while you were doing kind of work and bits and...
No, I joined the company. I went for lots of different interviews in lots of different companies when I first moved to London. And I just applied for loads of different jobs, and I was applying for, you know, very junior position jobs. I wasn't trying to take over the world. You know, I was going in there on a junior salary and willing to learn and keep going up and up and up. You know, it's funny, you come out of college or whatever and you think like, oh, I'm ready. But like, it just begins there. You start from the very bottom again. You know, you might be the big dog in your fourth year in college, but the second you come out, in my mind, you're back down the bottom again, and then you just have to climb back up. But like, you learn so much, like in the first few years in a job. Like, I think it's invaluable, really. I worry about people going freelance straight away from college. I think they should probably go to an agency for a couple of years and like get stuck in, because you learn so much, you know, bouncing ideas off other designers, learning about the hierarchy of a company and stuff like that, you know. So yeah,
I think just even the people skills is probably the most important part. Like just learning how to like dissect a brief, or like like watching a senior gear a marketing campaign manager in a different route because they know it won't work. Like that is a skill in itself, right?
100%. Yeah. So like I've worked in big companies now since I've been freelancing, you know, with like 200 people in there or walking around, nobody knows each other that well, to like companies that have 10 people, you know. And the companies where I worked with 10 people, I feel like I learned the most, because you can literally see like, this is the creative director pitching the work to the client, and then this is the manager who's overseeing it, and the account managers they're all in the same room, and then the designers over there, and then a motion designer is, you know, usually at the end of the factory line, you know. And it's interesting just to see like that kind of process, and that definitely helped me a lot with freelancing as well, seeing how small companies operate.
How do you see the different environments? So you have your in-house marketing team, your studio, your agency. Like, which one do you prefer to work in, and why? Like, I always find that interesting because different designers prefer different environments.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I haven't worked in-house before, so I can't really comment on that. So I can only comment on studio and agency, you know. So like, agency is fast paced, you know. It's, you know, there's so many, you're juggling projects all the time. Like there's like 5 clients, and every client has to feel like they're the number one client. And that's like the kind of mirage that is painted in an agency. But I suppose everyone kind of knows it, but no one really says it. And but that's, you know, under pressure makes diamonds, or whatever the saying is. But like, you know, I'm throwing them out there, Brian. But no, you know, it's you get pushed to the max sometimes in an agency, you know, like when it's crunch time, and it makes you come up with solutions quicker and like solve problems quicker. And, you know, and also at the end of work, if you worked in an agency for 3 years, you're going to have a plethora of work to show to the next client, or so next company, or any future clients. So whereas in-house, I suppose, but when in-house, I imagine you would have more control over things. Like you can like get deeper into projects because you're there every day. Like, you know, you're making sure this brand is like fully aligned with its goals and stuff. So yeah.
I definitely agree with the in-house
you?
stuff. So like with the in-house stuff for sure, I found you get a bit more control. There is then what's funny about the in-house is like, depending on where you are, there's this battle to like not give your work up to an agency because you want to do the cool stuff in-house because you can see what they've done maybe in the past, some clients, but then they go and outsource it to an agency because it's just the done thing. And you're like, oh, I could have done that if you just gave me maybe one or two freelancers, we could have all worked on it together. But there's definitely more of a calmness in-house, and if they have the budget, they'll outsource. I think there's definitely a shift to companies going in-house in the last year or so, because I mean, you know, as good as some agencies and studios are, the fees can be crazy. So it's definitely interesting. I'm finding to see that at the moment. But so when you did go freelance, what were the biggest challenges? What were the biggest surprises? And go, oh, I didn't know this, or I have to overcome that.
Oh yeah, well, like you learn loads like in the first 6 months. Like, you know, there's so much that you need to learn. Like I obviously, before I took the leap into freelancing, I prepared myself. You know, I didn't just do it on a whim. So like a year before I decided to go freelancing, I, you know, built my website, built my show reel, you know, built up a list of contacts from previous people that I've worked with in London over the years, you know, just telling them like, I'm going to go freelance soon. Check, you know, keep me in mind. So like, I think I was booked on like, I started in January as well, which is a funny time to start. I decided to, you know, start on like the 4th of January when everyone comes back after Christmas. But I think I was like booked on the 5th or 6th, you know, and on a small project, because I was telling everyone before that I'm going to go freelance. And I was kind of like, so yeah. And obviously, you know, you save some money beforehand so that you have enough to keep you ticking over if the work doesn't come in. But I suppose loads of things you need to learn. You need to understand like the pencil system. For me, that was a big one to learn when I first got
explain that because like I don't know if it's specific to the UK, but I definitely know what happens in America too. So I think people would be interested in that, especially like if you're just coming into the freelance world.
Yeah, it's different in America though, isn't it? It's got a different name.
I can't remember the name, but it's a similar system.
It's the same concept, yeah. So it's quite hard to explain on a podcast, but like basically when a client comes to you and asks you for work in a few weeks' time, they will usually pencil you and they say, can I pencil you for the week commencing the 15th of July, for example? And you would say, if you don't have any work, you would say, yes, you can pencil me. And that doesn't mean you're confirmed. It just means that, you know, you're going to be talking to them closer to the time to confirm. But then at the same time, you might get a second pencil from someone else. So you have to talk to another brand, because basically you always have to look after yourself and make sure that your calendar is booked up. And then it just gets tricky with pencils. And some people take advantage of the pencil system and they pencil for too long. But like most people honor it. Like it's not based on any contracts or anything, as you know. It's just more of like a verbal agreement of how the industry works. Like
it's almost like a principle, like an unwritten law of penciling, I think.
The unwritten law of penciling,
We've all met designers who abuse the system as well. Try and take 10 pencils.
10 pencils. Don't do that. Yeah, don't do that. I think that's just overall thing as a freelancer. Like, just don't be a pain in the arse. You know what I mean? Like, just be useful to studios. Be a nice person to work with. Like, sometimes you can talk about style all day long. You can talk about skill sets, software, but like, as long as you can just, you know, turn up and give people good value, like, you know, and just bring some skills to the table. Obviously, you have to be skilled in some sort of discipline, but yeah, that's kind of the main thing. Yeah.
And do you think there's any advantages to being Irish in the industry?
Well, meeting you and meeting fellow Irish guys, I suppose we all bloody stick together. Like, what's all that about? Nah.
All we need is a sleeping bag and a phone number, and we're sorted.
Yeah. Irish motion designers. I think when I met you at that motion meetup, it was just me, you, and Kevin O'Shea sitting in the corner, like drinking beers. And I was like, okay, we better go talk to some other people here. No,
I blame Kevin
look,
for that.
Kevin, yeah. I've met lots of Irish guys in the industry, you know, like in London, you know. It's like the diaspora of Irish people, you know, they're everywhere. So you're going to meet Irish people everywhere you go. I don't know if it has a strength or a weakness, but I suppose you feel a bit like you know them a bit more, like Irish people do. Where are you from? You know,
the
what's
big
your
question.
surname? You know,
are you from North or South? I think there's a definite culture of Irish people being able to talk a bit. It's that kind of ability to tell a story or to sell in your skills. I don't know. Maybe it's a thing Irish people have. I've definitely seen it more with us.
Yeah,
and I guess we're just a bit. Yeah, the gift of gab. I guess we're a bit different as well. Like, do you ever get homesick? Do you ever think like, would you ever go back home, or is your home now London? Do you see that as your home?
Well, I have been here for like 10 years now. My whole career and contact list is all based over here. And I really do enjoy living in London, but I do go back to Ireland quite a lot. You know, I see a lot of my friends and family over there a few times a year. I'd never say never about going back to Ireland, you know. I suppose kind of conversations like this, and you're always showing me new Irish motion designers, and we talk about Irish studios and stuff like that. If there was a bridge over to Ireland to, you know, bridge that gap, I'd be up for it.
Yeah, I guess the internet helps keep the world a bit closer together, right? Like you're not. It's not like the 80s where you'd have to ring home on a payphone.
No, this is Zoom calls now.
Yeah, Zoom calls now with the whole family packed into one frame.
Remember Skype calls? I do not miss them.
I still talk to 1 or 2 Irish friends on Skype weirdly. I'm like, geez, we need to upgrade here.
Just the sound alone gives me anxiety. But
yeah, our MSN, the MSN sound was weird as well. So you were a budding musician at one point, and quite a good one. You know, you were very involved in the Irish music scene. And like, when did that start? Do you think it has had influence on your work today?
Yeah, well, like I suppose everything in my life has had an influence on what I do today. You know, from when I was a kid and I used to skateboard in seaside town Tremor that I'm from, you know, like that kind of skateboard culture kind of bled into me a little bit, like, you know, because it's all about like making your own logos and making your own skateboards and making, like, that's the kind of ethos behind skateboarding, you know, make your own skate video, you know. So that was like something that was coming into my head a lot. And like we'd be in like art class in school and like trying to redraw like the Element logo or like the Wu-Tang logo or something like that.
Sick.
Like, I'm like, the art teachers are probably like, why are you using rulers in here trying to draw perfect like Vans logo with the V split across the end? They're like, can you please just draw something with your hand? But I suppose like that's just what we were doing at the time. That's what me and all the guys were just doing, like skateboard graphics, like drawing them ourselves and stuff. That's when I was really young. And then I suppose, getting into the kind of independent music scene, that was a big influence because, you know, if you're just a band or a musician trying to make music, like you're going to need graphics, you're going to need videos. So I suppose I've got a friend of mine, Mook Veen. He got me basically into all of this. Like he's a creative guy, an all-round creative guy, like an artist, a producer, music producer. He's still doing it to this day. You should check him out. His stuff is called Nylon Primate. It's good stuff.
Cool.
But he basically used to like create graphics in Photoshop, and I was like a lot younger at the time, and I used to just watch him like creating graphics like album covers, CD covers, posters for gigs and stuff. And then that moved on to videos. So then like when the Canon 5D Mark II came out, that like opened the doors for video. Like it was just nice video content, you know. Before that it was like very expensive cameras, and then that kind of opened my mind. So then we're just editing Premiere Pro, After Effects, Illustrator, bringing in files from Illustrator, bringing in Photoshop, and then it's just all kind of amalgamating into this kind of thing that I was getting interested in. So that whole scene had a massive impact on me because it doesn't feel real unless you have graphics, you know. It kind of makes something feel real. It's like, oh, we have a poster now, we have a CD now, we have a logo, you know.
Feels branded, doesn't it?
Yeah,
feels like a kind of like an identity.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and it's a great thing. Like, it's a great skill to have, to kind of make something come to life, especially now, like, everyone's got an Instagram, everyone's selling something now, everyone's
Yeah.
got a different business they're starting up. But like, it comes from that original kind of mindset, with like do it yourself kind of thing, which is a big influence on me.
Do you miss the music scene at all? Do you still play music now? Like in your spare time, will you still do stuff for just yourself?
Not really. I don't do it as much as I used to. I keep an eye on it though. Like, I'm still friends with all my mates who work in that world, like, and I support everyone who does it. Like, and I'm
Yeah,
going to a festival in a few weeks' time altogether now, so I should see a few people over there for
classic.
that. Like, and yeah, like, it's the Irish music scene is healthy, more healthy than ever. Really, like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, it's really
it's a
good at
very
the moment.
healthy scene. Yeah. So yeah, I keep an eye on that. Like, I don't really make it as much myself anymore, but I definitely keep an eye on it. Like,
I definitely remember that kind of skater phase myself. Like I was big into the graph scene, and like
yeah,
when I started getting into that type of work, into motion graphics, I definitely had an influence on me. Just the colors, the saturated colors used in that scene, like everything was really rich. And that's all I want to make. I want to make these like psychedelic rich colors when I start designing, just explode your brain kind of a
yeah,
thing.
yeah. Crazy colors. Yeah, like, just, yeah. That's your stuff is like that. Very
Yeah,
colorful. Like, contrast. That's the good thing about like digital graphics and computer graphics. Like, you have all those colors at your disposal.
yeah,
And like, I'm guilty of like just using black and white a lot, because I do love the kind of contrast there and the kind of impact of black and white. But like, colors, man, you just can't underestimate color. Like, really, like
yeah, exactly.
studios like Illo. Do you know Illo in Italy?
I don't know them. I need to check them out now, though.
ILLO.TV. Yeah, they done the new graphics for the Euros in 2024.
Oh,
This
sick.
one,
Yeah,
this recent Euros, like, so like, they're just colorful, just nice graphics. Like, and they don't, like, their stuff is very complex, but they lean heavily on just beautiful colors, like, and it works well.
and color theory is such a fine art in itself. Trying to balance like what's kind of what harmonizes well together.
Big time.
Yeah,
Yeah, like, you could go down some massive rabbit holes with color theory, like, forever. Like, it never ends in my mind. But I always feel like the amount of saturation in a color is just as important as well. So like, so
yeah,
if you have a very hot, yeah, exactly, you know what I mean. It's more about the amounts than the actual
yeah,
colors
yeah.
itself sometimes. Yeah.
So you kind of, I guess, there's like a journey there where you got your early inspiration from. Where do you get your inspiration from now? So where do you still seek out inspiration, or does it just kind of come to you?
Yeah, like, like, so I like watching boxing and stuff like that. So I love everything that DAZN are doing.
Oh
DAZN,
yeah, they're
DAZN,
doing really
that
cool stuff.
sports
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
broadcaster.
I'm subscribed to it. Sure, I'm a big boxing fan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like, that stuff that they did, like the 5v5 graphics were amazing, and
That's
all that,
incredible,
and
wasn't it? Yeah.
all their social stuff. Yeah, just DAZN makes some amazing stuff. So they're a big inspiration for me at the moment. I suppose designer wise, Klaus Studios, his name
Yeah, I
is
know
Klaus
him. Yeah.
Studios. And he's like, his style alone, like, it just is massively inspirational for me. Like, it's like, he's got like hand drawn elements, but also really nice typography and nice compositions and stuff. But yeah, and then like, just London itself. There's so many amazing agencies in London making things. Like, and I don't mean just online. You can go down to like Tottenham Court Road
Yep.
and see like the Alternet. Like, just there, if you just stand in the Alternet for 10 minutes, you're going to see some amazing motion graphics. Like, and it's the same as just down the road from there, W1 Curates as well.
Yeah, yeah,
In
yeah.
the basement, there's always some sort of exhibition in there. Even Niketown. Like, I was just in Niketown the other day.
Yeah.
That is a crazy world now. Just motion graphics everywhere. Like, you're just walking through a whole world of motion graphics. Like, it's crazy.
Classically, you're a graphic designer, though, so that's kind of it's a big influence for you.
Well, I suppose in the multimedia degree that I did, we did a lot of everything. So like,
Yeah.
I did do design, and I did do video and documentary film at the same time. And we did a lot of interactive media, like literally creating installations where people can like react with sensors, and then it changes
Wow.
the artwork on screen and stuff like that. That's what a lot of my degree was about. Yeah, so I do spend more time looking at design and trying to improve my design skills, because I do feel that it is a very important part in motion graphics.
Yeah, yeah.
You sometimes you can meet motion graphic designers, who don't really care about design that much, and,
Yeah.
and I feel like you'll have a harder life, because a good design with a little bit of motion is better than
Yeah,
a
yeah.
bad design with loads of motion.
Exactly. Yeah, that's such a good point. Like, do you do a lot of, I'm guessing you do a lot of personal work then, right? And how do you find the time to allocate that? And like, what have been your standout pieces for yourself that you have enjoyed doing? I mean,
Yeah, personal projects, like everyone is trying to do one. Like, it's hard to fit it in all the time, but like it is really important, because they say, like, show the work you want to make. Because if your website is like your shop window, like the client will only buy what they can see in the shop window. They won't, like, you can have it in your mind all day long and be like, oh, I want to make stuff that looks like this, but if you can't show that, sadly, they will not buy that.
yeah,
So if you want to work in sports graphics, or if you want to work in tech graphics, or if you want to work in the food space, or the spiritual mindful space, which is quite big at the moment, then you're going to have to show that, or show something that's close to that. So yeah, I've took on a few different personal projects, some just to upskill on 3D. So like I created like a portrait series of those 3D heads, and I collaborated with various different artists. I collaborated with an Irish designer called Shane
cool.
O'Driscoll. He's mostly known for his kind of sculptures, or like static kind of graphics, kind of like flat graphics. So he kind of wrapped it around a 3D head, which was
That's
kind of
very
cool.
cool.
Yeah, that was fun. So that was just kind of like trying to figure out new kind of, that's more in that kind of arty kind of space, no clients involved, no kind of. And then I suppose in the design space, I messaged a guy called Typefool. He's on Instagram and he's on YouTube, and he's a guy who's based in Amsterdam, in Holland, and sorry, I think it's Rotterdam if I got that wrong. But he is like a serious graphic designer, serious logo designer. Like, he cranks out so much work, like he has got a massive portfolio, and I've been following him for such a long time. So I messaged him and I said, like, during lockdown, I think it was, I was like, hey, do you want to do a project? Just 20 logos, 20 animations. You just give me the logos, I'll do the animations. And he was like, yes, let's do it. And so we started doing that. And obviously there's a little bit of back and forth, but not as much as you'd have on a normal client project. Whereas like we're trying to, so I had more freedom with a personal project. So then when I created it and we posted it online, like, it's like one of the best videos I've posted online. Like, it got the most traction. And then that brings inbounds then. So then lots of people were messaging me then, oh, I want something similar to that. Like, I want something similar to what you've done with Typefool, whether it's bento boxes or, like just motion branding in general, which I'm loving lately, just motion branding as a whole concept. But yeah, so I have also spoke to clients and stuff, and they're like, can you show me big brands? Like, can you show me big projects and big
they're
brands? And you're
obsessed
like,
with that stuff. Like,
yeah. And you're like, okay, I can show you big brands, but like, I suppose I prefer to show you the kind of smaller brands or my personal project stuff if you want to know what my style is,
Yeah.
I think people who are in the industry for a long enough time know that, like, it's not about the big brands, really. It's more
Yes,
about
it's about the
what you're
work.
doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about the work. Like, people say, what is your like favorite brand to work on, or your favorite type of brand to work on? I just say, like, a brand that's willing to like try new things, try and be a bit different, try and have some fun, or like try and be creative. That's, for me, it's not about the biggest brands. It's about like the brands that are brave enough to do something different.
Yeah, and the brands that have been brave enough to do something different tend to stand out, right? Like, I mean, Nike is a example in the 90s. They absolutely tore through the kind of advertising industry with their campaigns because they tried something different. Interesting point on how you approach personal work. I mean, you've just taught me something there, because sometimes I find to put all the pressure on myself for personal work and to never reach out. Like, what was the first time you did that to another designer? Just reach out randomly. It's like, do you want to do this? Because I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. Well, I suppose Typeful was really the first time I did it. Like, in 2020, I suppose I must have been. Yeah. I think I wrote it in a way because look, Instagram DMs are not the best way to talk to people, but I just said it openly. I said like, look, it's not for any money. It's not for anything. It's just like for a portfolio. Would you be interested in that? And I have been messaged by some people and they say like, can you animate my logo for free? And like,
No.
I'm like, you know, you know,
Yeah.
it's about how you approach it. I said, look, do you want to just have some fun with this? Do you like, I think if you reach out to an illustrator, I'm not into character animation, but if you're into character animation and you know someone who's an illustrator of characters, you should
Yep.
message them and be like, hey, I love your style. Would you like to see it animated? And then before you know it, like you might even come up with an even bigger project. And, it doesn't have to be all on your own, but you could
Yeah,
do
I
that too. But
think that's a great idea. Just kind of like see it as two artists working together more than anything else. Yeah, so you spoke about like getting into 3D. Is that something like in terms of software and skills? Is that something you want to learn more of, or is there any other specific software skills you want to upskill in? And how did you find the 3D stuff actually?
yeah, like so I sell myself as a 2D motion designer who's like rooted in design and rooted in typography and composition and color. That's kind of my main skill set that I sell to people. But then I suppose I want to learn 3D in the background on my own. And that's what I have been doing for the last few years. And I have incorporated it into a couple of projects here and there. Yeah, it's something I love to learn and love to always get better at. I think overall, the style I would like to really project would be kind of like mixed media, like kind of 2D,
Yep.
3D, kind of, and a bit. And so I feel like there's room for like analog kind of features in there
Yeah,
too. I know
yeah,
it's like a
yeah.
bit of a mix mash now. I feel like I don't think we should get into an AI chat now, but like in the world of AI that's coming down the tracks, I feel that audiences might want a more analog feel on
Yep.
things, and they might
Yep.
want a more hand kind of. It's like that. People are already talking about an anti-AI movement. There's already like a new version of Dribble, a new version of Behance that's just for classically
Artists,
trained
yeah.
artists and stuff. Yeah, I think even in the future, people might even want to buy like screen prints where they can see the screen print, they can see the ink on the
Yeah.
page, or they can see the painter with the paint. I suppose that's different with us on screen, but like I do feel I was on a project recently for a scooter brand, and they wanted to do like analog and digital. They wanted to marry the two. And it was really fun because we got to use like things that you don't often get to use, like crazy film burns, like flickering film, and lots of different like elements like that like really fun to use. And I just think brands like that who are like willing to push it a bit more in that direction will stand out more. And look, I could be wrong. It's not all about trends, like, but it's what I'm interested in. I am really interested in that kind of analog feel with the digital feel, kind of merging it together.
I think you're dead right. I had this thought recently on, again, let's steer away from AI rabbit hole, but the idea of like at the moment, AI is spitting out so much generative art that it's actually using its own art to make art. So it's actually becoming super sterile at the moment.
Wow, I didn't
Which
know that.
which kind of beckons your point. And I already have this idea in my head for a studio in the future of like I call organic, basically. Someone's gonna steal it though. But
Yeah,
like you're
yeah,
just handcrafting stuff. And there are people out there. There's not a lot, but there are people out there that is willing to pay for something just because it's different or it's sold kind of like as a craft, handcrafted. And I think also with the kind of merging of Gen Z's weird obsession with 90s analog, tactile,
yeah,
grunge stuff, we are definitely going down that route where we might even, have an influx of hand animators in the future. People actually drawing and
yeah.
claymation and all that kind of stuff might come back because I definitely think, and I wonder what your thoughts of this is. In the last 10 years, I think design, especially on the web, like aesthetic has been sterilized to be almost very monochrome and too minimal. Whereas I love kind of
Big
overexpressing a
time.
bit, and that's been lost, I think.
Yeah, like maximalism and stuff, like
Yeah,
just going crazy with it, but it's kind of fun. But yeah, I agree. Like it has became a little bit sterile, and I do feel like people will basically, most trends are dictated by the consumer or the audience. Like if the audience are not responding well to AI art or AI work, and then no one will do it anymore, because that's the basically the end line. Listen, I know we could talk. I'm a fan for automating boring things with AI. Like, let's like reframe this, reframe that. If you can speed up my workflow, I'm all here for it. You know what I mean? But anyway, just we won't go down that rabbit hole. But I do think that there's going to be a, like you said, that 90s kind of vibe is coming back. Like it's here now, basically.
Yeah.
And the kind of crafted look, like brands like Oatly, the oat
Yeah, I
milk and
saw
stuff
that.
like
Yeah.
that. They really stood out because they were like just going like for like just that really kind of rustic kind of hand feel, like ripped paper and stuff like that, and hand drawn. So that stands out on a shelf, So
It gets an emotional response because that's at the end of the day how you commercialize the work. You need someone to go, oh, I like the look of that, or I like what they're selling me because it looks like something I can, actually grab and put in my fridge.
Yeah, basically that's it.
So in terms of like, I guess in terms of software, do you see yourself, is it just 3D in like, what's the package you use? Is it Cinema 4D? Are you interested in Blender?
Yeah, so Cinema 4D is what I've been using. I haven't used Blender before. And obviously After Effects and Illustrator and Photoshop, like I feel like you could just dedicate so much time just to Photoshop alone. I feel like it's kind of underestimated in some sort of motion graphic circles. Like I think, so that alone is amazing because you can get nice brush strokes, you can get like a nice textured feel that you can't get out of most programs, and they marry up well with After Effects. But I suppose other softwares and technologies that I'm looking at, I was looking at Rive the other day, so
what's Rive? I've actually never heard of it.
Yeah, so it's an animation software, but it's web-based, so it's like Figma. And you can basically create animations for the web. So it has like a timeline and keyframes on it. But so say for example, you were making like a button to tick on and off, like on an application. You design it in Rive and then you'd export it in a format that you could hand off to a web developer. So it's like it's we use Lottie and body moving and basically
I've used Lottie loads. Yeah.
But it's further than that again, because you can create like, very interactive animations, like so whether it's with a mouse click or whether it's with a keyboard, or 5 stars, when you hit 5 stars, like the 5 stars animate and stuff like that. So there's a lot of people looking at that at the moment, Rive. So yeah, that could be something that's coming down the tracks, like, and that's another world in motion design that you wouldn't think, like.
I've saw a talk on Motionographer, I think it was 4 years ago, Justin Cohn, and he was talking basically about the amalgamation of like all technology in one, and that's how he sees basically where it's going with motion design. We're kind of like, it is a jack of all trades strategy for sure. It's madness. And he was saying that like one thing which he says, like, experiential design is a whole area that hasn't even been properly explored.
There's so many things you need to know as a motion designer. Like, someone might be like, oh, can you export it as this? Can you export it as that? Can I give you an InDesign file? Can I give you an Illustrator file? Like, you're like a funnel, like, and everyone's throwing all these files at you. And you just got to funnel it all down. So you got to understand so many different disciplines to a degree. I don't know enough about every discipline, but you have to know enough to talk to each discipline,
Yeah, for sure. And like, how do you manage, which is a whole other skill of motion design, whether you're in a full-time job or freelancing, how do you manage those kind of clients day to day? Like, how do you manage like the difficult situations that we come across? What's your like fail safe?
Yeah. I suppose it's just communication at the end of the day, isn't it? You've always got to just keep communicating with them. Don't like assume that they're a mind reader. You are the person providing the service at the end of the day. You are the expert. So, always remember that. Like they're coming to you for a service, and at the end, like, that's another thing. That's why personal projects are good, because when you're providing a service, I feel you can guide them in a certain direction, but they will go the way they want to go.
Yeah.
You can guide them as much from your experience, but at the end of the day, it is a service. So, but yeah, how I deal with tricky situations, I suppose, yeah, it's just communication, always giving them rationale to why that might not work. So
Yeah.
if something works in one color, it won't work in another scenario. So it won't work when we're shining the camera towards the sky, like because it's too bright or something. We need to make sure like the motion identity works in so many different scenarios. But that's a whole different thing. That's like motion identity, like motion packages and toolkits. Like so, yeah.
It's very difficult.
I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
No, it does. I think transparency with a client for sure is vital. I think always keeping them up to date, and what you said there's even probably the most important thing is don't be afraid to challenge something that they put out there, because there's too many yes people, and I think it's important to go, look,
totally.
I'm gonna say this mightn't work. If you want to go ahead with it, we'll go ahead with it, but this might be a break in brand identity or something, and I just want to make sure you're aware of that. A doctor would never not tell someone they have cancer. We need to tell a client that this might screw up.
Literally, like you have to show people stuff as well. That's another thing I do. We can say things all day long because we're visual people. I could communicate with you visually. We could talk about halftone textures or like, and you'd know exactly what I mean. But a client wouldn't know what a halftone, generally wouldn't know what a halftone texture is. So I'm not afraid to just quickly bang something together for a client just to get the idea across. Like even before I've agreed to a project, I might say to a client, like, let me just put together a couple designs to see what you're thinking, or even just references like a mood board.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, no, that's it. Like, let's go. Because sometimes you can talk for too long and no one is visualizing what you're visualizing. You can be like, no, it's just like this. And they're like, oh yeah, fine. Because it is a visual medium we're in. So I think showing clients stuff or showing them why it doesn't work, is another one we have to do. Yeah. Show the client why it doesn't work,
I think that's I've been awfully guilty of not doing the thing that I know won't work at times, especially earlier in my career. And it's come back to bite me many times. And when I've done the thing, when I've done it and I've shown them it hasn't worked, they're like, okay, let's try this way. And I'm like, okay, I should have done that at the very start. You know what I mean? So definitely important to show. And this idea, I had a situation before where I was told, oh, we don't want to waste any more time on this. And I rolled and I was like, look, we're not wasting time. We're figuring out what works and doesn't work. No time is wasted in that process unless I'm not actually showing you work and just playing video games all day. That's wasting time. If I'm outputting work and you're telling me that element of it works or that element doesn't work, we're getting closer to the final solution.
Yes, definitely. Like you need to know what's working and what's not working,
What is next for Sam? Like, what do you have any, like, are you happy? Because there's this kind of ongoing conversation always in the motion industry. People are like, oh, the next step is to start a studio or to, become a creative director. And I was reading this article on Motionographer where it said, you know what, sometimes it's best to just chill and enjoy your freelance career. And I've definitely, I agree with that. But, where do you see your route going from now?
Yes, it does change quite a lot. I do enjoy working with junior motion designers and stuff. I have, worked in those scenarios before where like you're kind of overseeing a project and making sure that it all comes together right. There's a lot of kind of fun that comes with that, and like you feel good because you're teaching someone something. Like, so that could be something I could go down in the future. But I suppose I do appreciate and I like my freelance life. I like feeling like I have, or creating my own kind of future in a way, like being able to pick and choose projects. Look, you can't always pick and choose projects. Like sometimes you just need to pay the bills, right? And you need to do projects. But like every once in a while a good project comes along and it's fun, and I really do enjoy that. When you have like issues in your personal life, like family issues, family problems and stuff, I was able to take time off freelancing, which is like invaluable, So I suppose I am enjoying the kind of freelance side of things at the moment. Yeah, a studio is a big step, because I suppose then you're not really on the box anymore. What they say, is that what they say? But yeah,
Yeah,
you're not really
yeah.
like creating
I'm
everything anymore. But look,
I'm terrified of that. I'm terrified of coming off the tools.
yeah, it's fun, like, on a day-to-day basis, like opening Photoshop and Illustrator, and like, looking at fonts, colors, like, creating things. There's a lot of fun in that. It really is problem solving. Like,
Yeah,
it's that word is thrown around so much, but it really is. It's like, it doesn't work in this scenario because it's not legible here and it's not legible there. Like, I kind of enjoy that kind of process. But I suppose, yeah, creative directors also must find that kind of enjoyment, because they're overseeing it. They've got their hands in all the pies. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I suppose for now and the next while, freelancing, always upskilling, always trying to learn more. Trying to improve the workflow, get
yeah.
faster at it. So yeah, anything in AI that can assist that, I'm here for.
Do you use
Yeah.
AI? Do you use it to automate stuff and to just quicken up your process?
Yeah, it's anything that can like fix the process. I'm reading up on at the moment. Like, anything that can like speed up the workflow, like whether it's like horizontal to vertical, like that is a big
Yeah,
issue
that's
in
a
this industry.
nightmare.
So look, it's a lot of work in the industry as well for people, like reframing, resizing. But if there's anything that could come down the road for that, I'm always trying to read articles about that. It's such a complex thing inside After Effects, though, because I don't see how a computer can actually replicate that. How AI
Yeah,
could replicate that.
I don't know, and that's actually something Sora is struggling with anyway at the moment. It can't if you go to, I think if you go to Sora at the moment, I'll give it to me in vertical and 16:9, it won't be able to do it, and it can only do things up to HD. Can't actually do
Yeah,
4K at the moment. So I
yeah,
think I think the whole tech industry have, surprise, surprise, overpromised again.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
we're still trying to figure this shit out.
I think Runway look good. Runway looks like they're
Yeah, it
making
does.
some good stuff. I've used them for rotoscoping stuff, like tested it out the other day, and it's really fast.
I want to thank you for joining me, taking the time out. It was a pleasure to talk to. I think it's been long overdue that I get an Irish person on.
Yeah.
More to
Am I the
come,
first
hopefully.
Irish person?
Yeah,
Am I the
yeah.
first? Yes. First Irish person on it.
I'll be in
You
trouble with my
can't
other
be
Irish
first
friends.
twice. You have to get them on it.
But yeah, thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure to talk to you, listen to your journey.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Cheers,
Cool.
Brian, man. Thank you very much for having me, man. And yeah, let's do it again. We have to do it again in a few years' time or a few months' time.
Yeah, definitely. A panel discussion with more Irish people.